The new creator economy, we're going from Web 2 to Web 3. We see, just like, we talk about everything of value being tokenized on Hedera, ideally. We see online communities, Web 2 creators, content creators, all of these people, ultimately all creators out there, tokenizing their community with NFTs. So we've built an infrastructure, an ecosystem of tooling. We have the social space, the wallet, the marketplace, the NFT tooling, Launchpad, you name it, everything to support that process of creators moving from Web 2 to Web 3, right? Leveraging NFTs on Hedera. Up until recently, we've seen more, Web 3 native, like from the crypto community that are looking, starting things from scratch, essentially from very grassroots movements, whether they're artists or they want to crowdfund a platform or a project they're looking to build. NFTs are a great way, right? To crowdfund resources, gather people around an idea and in a decentralized manner, make that happen. But we're starting to see content creators, I'd say, YouTube channels. We had a live mint here today. He's recently taken that step, right? Even though his content is Web3, Hedera related, it's still a Web 2 medium, right? YouTube. So he's taken that step. He's tokenized his brand and community. And now with those NFTs, he's going to give people access to his Galaxy world, access to him, exclusive content. So Patreon style, right? But in a Web 3, fashion. So I think we're going to start to see a lot more of that from, just regular creators, content creators, see the solutions to a lot of the problems that they go through, especially, being tied or being hostage on these platforms, like their followers, for example, from one day to the next, they're gone. NFTs give you that ownership over the relationships that you build, right? In the communities. So ownership's a big deal. So I think, starting from the ownership, Web3, it shifts that ownership dynamic from platform to user. Everything at Kabila is permissionless, self-custody. You're using, any of the dApps that you're using, everything's always in your custody, right? I think that's super important moving into this new era. I want to talk about plazas because that's where monetization comes in, right? Not only are you taking ownership of those relationships, then you're bringing them into a token-gated space where they're getting exclusive access to you. For example, in the plazas, you can make a post, provide, some kind of value, and people can tip. So they can tip with HBAR, with, any other HTS token. So not only the creator himself can create that content and monetize it, but then you can encourage community members to also contribute to the conversation and they can get tipped as well. So you've got these, micropayments on Hedera are a blessing, right? So we're leveraging that and allow creators to monetize in that new way. Yeah, without necessarily needing to carry a project on your own shoulders, you can just participate in another one, contribute value, and be rewarded for that, right? The tech is obviously a big component. The language, the programming language. Like, I'm not a dev myself, but I know from the team that, they're conventional or traditional, let's say, programmers, and the whole JavaScript and the familiarity of the programming languages on Hedera just enabled a different pace, right? You didn't have, there was no learning curve, and it's just a lot easier to program with the SDKs and whatnot. So I think that's been a massive part, the tech. The governing council structure for a business that's looking into the future, it gives you that reassurance. Like, you're not just building on any network, you're building on a network that's governed by some of the biggest names and brands and institutions in the world, right? So I think when you're looking at things like that, the fixed fees, so you can forecast into the future. If you're looking to build a serious business, I think these are some of the things that you really consider. And Hedera just ticked all those boxes and more. It's an interesting conversation, right? The topic of decentralization, because there's two sides to it. There's the network, the nodes. And that's why I think some people say that Hedera is not that decentralized in that sense. That's why we need those community nodes, right? But when it comes to governance, there's nothing like it. Like, it's the most decentralized you could come across with their, monthly council meetings, and how, there's not just one person or a group of devs in a room making decisions for the network at a whim, right? So I think as a business forecasting into, 10, 20, 30 years into the future, you need to have that reassurance that from one week to the next, it's not just gonna, change. It's slower. Obviously, it's not as dynamic because it has to go through the council. But I think when you're building for the long term, you're willing to give. It's a give and take, right? So I think it's an important part. One thing to throw out there as well, like going back to the question of why. Like, I think as a retail facing platform and many others, Hashback, Karate Combat building on the network, the fact that we have access to an enterprise grade technology to build on, that's also, it's not the usual for retail. So I think the fact that Hedera has been more focused on that, now we're seeing a bit of a shift, which is pretty cool to see. But having that first phase of enterprise focus now enables us to build with that kind of tech, right? Which is pretty cool.